Welcome everyone to 2018-2019 video clips to deepen our thinking together. Last year it was mentioned that these were helpful. So my goal was to have one each month, but obviously September slipped by and now October is at the end. So I want to get this out before we reach November. So grab a cup of coffee and let's talk a little bit together. The topic of today's video clip is about directing visual attention to print. I have attached or given you a form of some information that I've just kind of been collecting and thinking about and put together for our talk today. So the reason that I am doing this topic is because, as many of you know, I have a very challenging child for me who came in with very minimal visual information, 10 letters. I think he could write one word, and just a theory of reading that was I just use my oral language and memorize books. So it's been a challenge. We're in week 8 now, and it's still a challenge, but I feel like some of the things that this little guy has helped me think about are useful for all of us. So hopefully I can share some things that will help you. So this is about the child who maybe you've asked the question, oh my goodness, we can't move from 2s and 3s into 4s. The child is not looking. The child is having a hard time taking on new letters, sounds, words, those kinds of things. And they have not much information with which to monitor with. So those are the kinds of kids that we're talking about today. And I know that some of you have those children because I've been on some visits that we've had a chance to talk about around. So the struggle is real. I know it very well because I'm living it. So let's just unpack this a little bit. When you see a profile like that, when you have an OS of a child where they have very minimal anchors with which to work with in strategic work in reading and writing, we really need to do some intentional thinking and work to build some things for them to use. So a theory that I have is that students who can't move from 2s to 3s, likely it's about the fact that they are still grappling with this oral language versus use of visual to move them forward and help them problem solve. And adding in this bit of visual is very tricky when it's hard for them to take things on and remember things and use that information along with their meaning and structure. So it's the use of that visual, but it's also shifting their theory of I can make it up. We've had, every one of us has had those children. Luckily, as I was thinking through this, an article came past my desk last week by Mary Lose and Betsy Kay, and it's called As Easy as ABC, Teaching and Learning About Letters and Early Literacy. This article just solidified and affirmed some of my thinking that I want to share with you, but also it's an article that is written not just for reading recovery and literacy lessons teachers, but also for the classroom teachers. So there's some things in there to help them think about. I'm thinking really K teachers for sure might be a good article for them. So I've linked this article in here for you to take a look at and read at your leisure, because you have so much leisure, right? Anyway, some of the things that Betsy Kay and Mary Lose say in that article are what we're going to also talk about today, because it was what I kind of had my direction in anyway. But before we do Betsy K and Mary Lois, let's talk about what Clay says about directing visual attention to print. I took a look at Becoming Literate and Change Over Time and literacy lessons and kind of scoured to see, okay, so does Clay give us that helps us understand this topic? So just I pulled a few quotes here that are in that second column. And the very first quote that says, early literacy learning involves discovering knowledge of the written code. That is, seeing the symbols or the letters and the patterns of symbols and looking at that print in a directional way with the right direction. But what then she says is this is not a naturally occurring set of learning. Okay, so I kind of took that last little piece and I'm like, yes, for some kids it is, and it comes easy. For other kids, like my little guy, it does not come easy. It is not naturally occurring. So I have to help it occur. Another quote that was in, this one actually is by Carol Lyons. It says, the decision that the individual makes with the information they pick up with their eyes is a prominent aspect of literacy processing. So that makes me wonder every day in reading and writing when I'm working with, I'll call him B, it makes me wonder, what is he picking up with his eyes? And he also has a little difficulty with remembering. So we're working on that too. The third quote by Clay is, print information must pass through the visual sense for reading to occur. And children have to learn what visual information in print is usable. So these three things are what I'm kind of forming my instruction for B around. I have to first know what he knows about symbols and direction, and I have to know what it is he is picking up with his eyes for use, and I have to help him understand what is usable and what is not usable or helpful. So that takes me to like our thoughts for instruction then. Okay, so I'm just going to share some different things. Hopefully there's some tools that will be helpful. I've shared a little bit with you, but I've had to make this work for this little guy. And I know that every child is a little bit different in how they are able to learn what it is they need to learn to take things on. But hopefully I can share some things that will be helpful for you. So I've added a little video to this handout, and you'll see like highlighted sections that maybe will show you a little bit of application to what it is I'm talking about. We're farther along than this. I did actually just step into force today, somewhat successfully, but I still am tentative with what he is picking up with his visual sense and remembering. So the 13-minute video is just clips of a lesson that I had with B, and hopefully you can take some time at some point after we've talked to go back in and listen or watch those little parts to see if it's anything that could help you. So I want to be mindful of B's literacy awareness and his early working systems. Okay. I know that my child has a hard time retrieving information visually. What I have learned in the last 7 weeks is that he can retrieve more through links than names of letters and whole words, although we are picking up words more quickly in reading. Now, today he just pointed and he said, oh, I know that word, in. So, I celebrate because he's noticing. So if the child is not attending to print, we want to keep really important data. We want to keep data that tells us what is useful for the child. So everybody has kind of their own little system, but his classroom teacher and I are kind of using something that looks like this. It just is anything that I see that he knows and he's using, not in isolation, but in text, I am making a mark. So the first column right here is just if he can tell me the names. So you see there's still quite a few missing names, okay, of letters. And it just is on the back like this. The column here, actually here, is as he is writing, I am looking and documenting if he can get to a letter through sound. So for example, he today actually wrote am on his own. He went like apple, put the A in. And then I had to say more. And he went like moon. He cannot say M, that is an M, but he can go like moon, which means he can use it in writing. So he's getting a little quicker at some of those links to get him to the symbols. The name of the letter isn't as helpful for him. So then that's in writing, but then in reading, as we are in 3s and 4s, and I'm working hard to get him to use the first letter to help him solve, to anticipate and solve. If I see him point to a letter and say, that's like, or he just says the sound, I know that he can use that as in his reading, solving and reading. So I'm just documenting and I'm showing his teacher this and giving his teacher this so that as she's reading and writing with him, she knows what we can hold him accountable for using and what we might need to then support as far as, is it like this or this? And that scale of help for that. So that's one tool. Tomorrow I'm going to do another letter check. But what I'm going to do for that letter check is instead of saying, just tell me what you know, the names or whatever, I'm going to tell him he can tell me anything he knows about those letters, which is something I've been doing in my sorting with him. If a child is not attending to print, she gives the same kind of suggestions that I'm telling you about. She says, make a plan to assess and monitor their developing letter knowledge. If you turn to the next page, analyze your assessment data to understand how students know letters. The motor part of writing too, some letters Benoni gets to through the oral path. He gets to D. Actually, now he can get to it through dog, but he used to only be able to get to it by going over and around, up, down. That's a D. So know what they can easily write and distinguish. Use running records and anecdotal notes to capture how they are using these multiple sources. So today was the first day I saw him go back and reread on his own. He isn't as fast to then put his finger under the first letter, which tells me he is still not really knowing how to use the visual information. So we are still working on that. Today I took out my little mask card thing, and when he got there, I showed him the first letter. Tomorrow, my hope is to put a magnet letter up there because I think that will be more helpful. Today, I thought, I should have used the magnet letter, but I didn't. So we want to definitely use running records and anecdotal notes to see how they're picking up that information. And then they have a little hint for Betsy K has a hint for classroom teachers. She's like organized flexible groups and arrange for one-to-one teaching to address that letter learning if need be. All right, so there's that's about letters and usefulness of letters, okay? The other part of visual information is obviously, are they taking on words? That has been a little slow, but we started Your Pile, My Pile almost right away, just with knowns. Then we're adding on as we go with words that he's encountering in text. I'll often give him a choice. Which one do you want to add? But then today, he's like, I know is. I want to add is to my pile. Perfect. and I've already been taking some words out now. He knows dad, he knows can, he knows see. And he is monitoring for those words in text now. So that there's a little section in there about watching us learn new words and things like that. The other part of visual attention is the hearing and recording. I think that I'm going to do a whole nother video on that piece, because I mean, yes, it has to do with visual attention, but it also has to do with that foundation of teaching them that phonemic hearing part. So I think we may have another video clip on that. Something just extra to attend to if you have a child who is really, you're needing to direct their visual attention to print. It's not just print. I want to say it's also like everything that goes on a page. So thinking about small letters versus big letters versus spaces between words versus, all of those things also are things to pay attention to with a child who is, that this is tricky for them. So if there are too many words close together, I know that is going to be trickier for Benoni. If the words are too small, that is going to be a little trickier for Benoni. So I have to pay attention to the books I choose. Other things that I've been thinking about in choosing books are, what is the layout? Where are there opportunities? This is how I'm trying to get him to move into fours. Does he have enough of the words on the page that he will monitor for? Meaning and structure are his strength. I'm not as concerned about that right now. He is starting to reread when it doesn't make sense to him, because I know he will, and he can anticipate things that do make sense. It is just the use of that visual information that I'm hitting hard. So when I choose books, I'm thinking about what he will understand, of course, but then I'm also thinking about where are those opportunities for him to problem solve using that first letter. We just did Shark in a Sack today, level 4, and honestly, I saw him pick up that visual information. I saw him even monitor and go back and say something else because it didn't have, like bear in a box, I think it was. He went, but I knew that because of Benoni. So those are the celebrations that I am now having with him. And I think that will continue. So hopefully there were a few things in this video that will help you if you have a child who is really at those early levels. If you want me to come do a visit, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to sign off for today. I will see you again soon.